Sarah had always imagined a life filled with love, stability, and happiness. When she married Tom, she believed she had found her forever partner. Together, they built a life and welcomed 5 beautiful children into their world. But life, as she would painfully learn, doesn't always follow the plans we make. It happened suddenly. One cold January morning, Sarah woke up to find a note on the kitchen table. Tom was gone. No explanations, no forwarding address. Just a few lines saying he couldn't handle the pressure anymore. At first, she thought it was some kind of cruel joke. Surely he would walk through the door by nightfall, apologizing and ready to make things right. But as hours turned to days and days to weeks, the reality set in. She was alone. With 5 children under the age of 10 staring up at her, Sarah felt crushed by the weight of responsibility. The house rent was overdue, the cupboards were nearly empty, and the bills were stacking higher than she could bear. Friends and neighbors offered kind words, but no one truly understood the sheer panic that gripped her heart at night. The first few nights were the hardest. After putting the kids to bed, Sarah would sit in the dark living room, tears streaming down her face as she wondered how she would manage. Every decision felt overwhelming. Could she keep the house? Should she move closer to her aging parents? Should she ask for help or struggle quietly? But amid the fear and heartbreak, something inside her began to change. Looking into the innocent eyes of her children, she realized they needed her more than ever. Their futures depended on her strength. Sarah wiped her tears, stood up a little taller, and whispered to herself, "We will get through this. I will not let them down." She started by making a list of everything she could control, applying for government assistance, finding part-time work, and cutting every unnecessary expense. She sold old clothes, baked goods for neighbors, and even took on babysitting jobs at night when her kids were asleep. Each dollar counted, and no task was too small or too hard. Most importantly, Sarah became a source of unwavering love and comfort for her children. She made sure they never felt abandoned, constantly reassuring them that everything would be okay. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and that was enough for now. As the days passed, Sarah's determination grew stronger. Life had handed her an unexpected and painful challenge, but deep down, she knew one thing for certain. She was not going to give up. This was just the beginning of a long, difficult journey, but one she was ready to face, armed with nothing but courage and hope. The first few weeks after Tom's departure were a blur of exhaustion and determination. Sarah quickly learned that survival wasn't about big, heroic moments. It was about the small, relentless steps taken every single day. There was no room for self-pity anymore. Her children's well-being came first, and that meant learning how to make the most of every resource available. Mornings started early. Sarah would rise before dawn, quietly slipping out of bed to prepare simple breakfasts. Oatmeal, toast, or whatever she could afford that week. She got the kids dressed and walked them to school, holding the littlest one's hand tightly. As soon as they were dropped off, her day truly began. She found part-time work at a local diner, waitressing during the busy lunch shift. The hours weren't long, but every tip mattered. In between orders, she practiced her smile, even when her heart felt heavy. The manager noticed her dedication and, after a few weeks, offered her extra shifts. Sarah accepted without hesitation. Afternoons were spent rushing home to greet the kids, helping with homework, and figuring out dinner, often a creative mix of the pantry staples. She learned how to stretch a pound of ground beef into 3 meals and how to make soups and stews that could last for days. "We may not have much," she would tell the kids with a smile, "but we sure know how to make it tasty." The hardest part was balancing everything alone. There were moments when it felt impossible, like when her youngest got sick and she had to miss work to care for him, knowing it meant a smaller paycheck that week, or when the washing machine broke and she had to scrub clothes by hand in the bathtub. But each setback became a lesson in perseverance. Sarah also taught her children valuable skills along the way. The older ones learned to pack their own lunches and help with chores, turning everyday tasks into opportunities to bond and grow stronger as a family. They learned to rely on each other, forming a tight unit that no challenge could break. Weekends were precious. Sarah made it a rule that no matter how hard things got, they would always carve out time for joy. Whether it was a picnic at the park with homemade sandwiches or a movie night with popcorn and blankets, these simple moments brought light into their lives. Laughter echoed through their small home, reminding Sarah why she was fighting so hard. Little by little, survival became their new normal. Sarah still worried, of course, but she also began to feel pride. She was doing it, providing, protecting, and nurturing her 5 children against all odds. The fear that had once paralyzed her was now replaced with fierce determination. Life was far from easy, but Sarah knew one thing for sure. As long as they had each other, they could get through anything. Just when Sarah thought she was finding her footing, life threw more obstacles her way. One rainy afternoon, as she rushed home with groceries, she found a bright orange eviction notice taped to her front door. Her heart sank. Despite all her hard work, she was behind on rent, and now they faced losing the only home they had left. Sarah sat at the kitchen table that night, staring at the notice, her mind racing. The kids sat quietly, sensing something was wrong. She fought back tears, determined not to let them see her breakdown. "We're going to figure this out," she promised, though inside she wasn't sure how. The next few days were a whirlwind of phone calls and meetings. She pleaded with the landlord, who gave her 2 more weeks to come up with the payment. Sarah worked double shifts, picked up cleaning jobs on weekends, and even sold some of their belongings to make up the difference. Her own needs were pushed to the bottom of the list. New clothes, proper meals, even sleep, all sacrificed to keep a roof over her children's heads. Just when things seemed to stabilize again, another blow came. Her middle son, Josh, broke his arm during a school game. Sarah spent hours at the emergency room, comforting him while worrying about how she would afford the medical bills. Every unexpected event seemed to threaten everything she had worked for. At times, Sarah felt utterly drained. Friends and acquaintances often told her she was so strong, but they didn't see the nights she cried herself to sleep, or the moments when she questioned whether she could keep going. Strength, she realized, wasn't about feeling invincible. It was about showing up, no matter how tired or afraid she felt. Through it all, her children remained her greatest motivation. Their smiles, their hugs, and their innocent faith in her gave her the energy to keep pushing forward. She taught them, even in hardship, the importance of gratitude. Every meal, every warm bed, every day together was a blessing, no matter how humble. Sarah also learned to accept small acts of kindness, something that hadn't come easily to her at first. A neighbor dropped off a casserole one evening, saying she had made too much. Another time, a friend passed down winter coats for the kids. These gestures, though simple, felt like lifelines during the toughest moments. By the end of that difficult year, Sarah had faced more challenges than she ever thought possible, but her family was still together, and that mattered more than anything. She looked at her children, all tucked safely into bed one night, and whispered to herself, "We're still standing." The setbacks had been brutal, the sacrifices endless, but Sarah's spirit remained unbroken. She had made it through another storm, and deep down, she knew she was ready to face whatever came next. As the months passed, something remarkable began to happen. Small victories started to pile up, giving Sarah and her children hope that brighter days were ahead. After nearly a year of juggling jobs and constant financial pressure, Sarah was offered a permanent full-time position at the diner where she had been working part-time. It came with better pay, health benefits, and the security she had so desperately needed. When the manager handed her the official offer letter, Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. It wasn't a glamorous job, but to her, it meant stability. That night, she shared the news with her children over a simple dinner. "Mom got a full-time job," she announced, her face glowing with pride. The kids clapped and cheered, their joy as genuine as if she had won the lottery. With steady income, Sarah finally managed to catch up on bills and even set aside a little savings. They moved out of their cramped, run-down apartment and into a modest but clean 2-bedroom home. For the first time in a long while, the kids each had their own bed, and there was space for them to play and study. Education had always been important to Sarah, and she pushed her children to do their best in school, even when life was chaotic. Slowly but surely, her efforts paid off. Her oldest daughter, Emily, won a scholarship for academic excellence, and her younger kids started bringing home certificates of achievement. Each success felt like a shared triumph, proof that their hard work and perseverance were making a difference. Sarah also began to dream again, something she hadn't allowed herself to do in a long time. She enrolled in evening classes at a local community college, determined to finish the nursing degree she had abandoned years earlier. It was exhausting, balancing work, classes, and parenting, but it filled her with a renewed sense of purpose. The family created new traditions too. Every Friday night was celebration night, where they would share something good that happened that week, no matter how small. Some weeks it was as simple as getting a good grade or learning a new recipe. Other times it was bigger, a promotion at work, or a milestone at school. These moments became precious reminders of how far they had come. Sarah knew they still had a long road ahead. There were plenty of challenges waiting around the corner, but for the first time in a long while, hope outweighed fear. She could see the future she had fought so hard for starting to take shape. A future where her children had the opportunities she had once only dreamed of. As she tucked her youngest into bed one night, Sarah whispered, "We're not just surviving anymore. We're building something beautiful." And as she turned off the light, she allowed herself a rare moment of quiet pride, knowing deep down that they were on their way to something greater. Sarah had always believed in standing on her own 2 feet. For so long, she had carried the weight of her family's struggles alone, determined not to be a burden to anyone. But as time went on, she discovered something she hadn't expected. There was incredible strength in community. It started with small gestures. One of her regular customers at the diner, Mrs. Turner, often stayed after her meal to chat. One afternoon, noticing Sarah's tired eyes, Mrs. Turner gently asked if everything was all right. Sarah hesitated at first, but eventually shared bits of her story. Mrs. Turner listened kindly, offering no pity, only understanding. A few days later, Mrs. Turner returned, not just as a customer, but with a purpose. She connected Sarah with a local community group that provided free tutoring for children and organized food drives for struggling families. Sarah was hesitant to accept help at first, pride still holding her back, but the children's excitement at having tutors to help with homework melted her hesitation. The support didn't stop there. The church down the street began to take notice of Sarah's dedication. One Saturday, volunteers from the church arrived unexpectedly, tools in hand, ready to help fix up the house Sarah had worked so hard to secure. They painted walls, repaired the leaky roof, and even built a small vegetable garden in the backyard. Sarah was overwhelmed with gratitude, tears streaming down her face as she thanked them again and again. Her children flourished with the extra support. The tutoring sessions boosted their confidence in grades, and the after-school programs gave them a safe, nurturing space to grow. Sarah noticed a change in them. They stood a little taller, laughed a little louder, and embraced their challenges with new determination. Sarah also formed deep friendships with other single mothers she met through the community group. They became her circle of strength, sharing advice, offering shoulders to lean on, and celebrating each other's victories. For the first time in a long while, Sarah didn't feel alone. She also began to give back, volunteering at food drives and sharing her story at local meetings to encourage others who were in similar situations. It felt good to offer hope, to show others that even in the darkest times, light could be found through kindness and connection. One evening, as Sarah stood in her backyard watering the small garden, she looked around at her children playing and the freshly painted house that now felt like a real home. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over everything, and she felt a deep sense of peace. She realized that while her strength had carried her far, it was the love and support of others that had truly lifted her and her family to new heights. The power of community had transformed their lives in ways she could never have imagined. With gratitude in her heart, Sarah smiled and whispered, "We're stronger together." The years passed more quickly than Sarah could have imagined. What once felt like an endless uphill battle slowly transformed into a journey of growth, achievement, and healing. Her 5 children, once so small and dependent, blossomed into capable, kind, and driven young adults. Her oldest, Emily, became the first in their family to graduate from college. The day of the ceremony, Sarah sat in the crowd, her heart pounding with pride and emotion. As Emily crossed the stage to receive her diploma, Sarah couldn't hold back tears. In that moment, all the sleepless nights, sacrifices, and struggles felt worth it. She had dreamed of this day, but seeing it come to life was beyond anything she had imagined. Her other children were following in Emily's footsteps. Josh, her middle son, had taken an interest in carpentry and was completing an apprenticeship. Her youngest, Lily, was passionate about teaching and had already begun volunteering at local schools. Each child had their own path, but they all shared the same core values: resilience, compassion, and a fierce determination to succeed. At home, life had settled into a peaceful rhythm. The once chaotic household was now a place of warmth, laughter, and deep love. Sarah continued working at the diner, but also completed her nursing degree, finally fulfilling a dream she had placed on hold for too long. She found a job at a local clinic where she cared for patients with the same empathy and dedication she had poured into her own family. But what Sarah cherished most were the quiet moments, the family dinners where everyone shared stories and jokes, the holidays spent together, and the simple joy of seeing her children happy and safe. These were the treasures she had fought for. One evening, after a particularly joyful family gathering, Sarah sat alone in her garden, reflecting on how far they had come. She thought back to the early days when fear and uncertainty had threatened to break her spirit. She remembered the sacrifices, the setbacks, and the countless nights she had wondered if she was strong enough. But now, as she looked at the legacy she had built, a family grounded in love, perseverance, and hope, she knew that every hardship had shaped them into who they were today. Her children often told her she was their hero, but Sarah knew the truth. They had saved her just as much as she had saved them. As the stars began to twinkle above, Sarah whispered a silent prayer of thanks. She understood now that her journey wasn't just about survival, it was about setting an example of strength, faith, and unwavering love. And though challenges would always come, she felt certain of one thing: her family's foundation was unshakable, built on years of hard work, sacrifice, and the kind of love that never gives up. With a heart full of peace, Sarah smiled to herself and thought, "This is the legacy we've created, and it will carry us forward for generations to come." Thank you so much for watching this inspiring story. If you enjoyed it and want to hear the next part of Sarah's journey, or discover more powerful family stories just like this, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll stay updated with all our latest videos and never miss a new story. Your support helps us continue sharing meaningful content that touches hearts and inspires hope. Hit that notification bell too, so you'll be the first to know when a new story is released. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next video.